Well, it's been about a month since the last LVMH Watch Week, back in the last week of January 2021. I wanted to give it a month so I could sort of look back and assess how did I think it went. And in particular, I wanted to compare it to another event that just happened this week. All in all, I thought it was pretty limp at best, pretty terrible at worst. And I'll talk about why on the other side. Hi, welcome back to Not So Obvious Watches. I'm Pete McConville, and this is my kind of look back at LVMH Watch Week, which was a wholly virtual event back in last week of January 2021. I want to look at it really through two lenses. One, as an LVMH event and what they produced in terms of watches, but secondly, as a prototype of a virtual event, as a virtual convention or conference kind of thing to replace what we got used to with Basel World, etc. And I think on both levels, it kind of fell flat. Now, to start with, maybe an LVMH show is always going to be a little bit flat. They're kind of in the grand scheme of things. If you think about the big watch groups, they're probably number 4 out of 5. You'd have Swatch at the top, I think is the biggest watch group. Then you'd have the Wilsdorf guys with Rolex and Tudor probably below them. Richemont I'd probably put next, and then you've got LVMH. Now you could argue about the order of Swatch and Wilsdorf, etc. But I think no one's going to say that LVMH would be above those. And of course, underneath that, you've got Kering Group, which is basically Ulysse Nardin and Girard-Perregaux. So who cares? So all in all, maybe LVMH isn't that big a draw. But if you dive into it, you've got Tag Heuer, which you might not have a lot of time for or respect for, but you can't deny they're a big name in the watch media, in the watch industry. They sell a lot of watches. They're in the kind of every mall, every shopping district. You got Bulgari, which is on a bit of a roll at the moment, just knocking things out of the park with the Octo Finissimo range. You got Hublot, which is a bit of a Marmite. Enthusiasts don't really love it, but the pro media it's becoming almost something of a darling for them. And then, of course, you've got Zenith, which is just a cult hit across the board. People are kind of loving what they're doing. So even though LVMH aren't a big group, I would have expected some buzz to come out of that. But the truth is, and I'm going to exclude the Chronomaster here because it was kind of released, the Zenith Chronomaster, because it was kind of released before the watch week. The whole watch week was a bit of a dud. It left me really flat. I mean, don't get me wrong, there was a couple of watches in there I did kind of like. Those Bulgari Diva Dreams were amazing to look at. And they really put other watchmakers who try and do that kind of dressy watch to shame when you see what happens when a real master jeweler takes on an activity like this. I think some of the Octo range, like the Minute Repeater, the Carillion Tourbillon, and the Grand Sonnery Perpetual Calendar, they're amazing watchmaking as well. So Bulgari did some amazing things both on the jewelry side and the watchmaking side. Some of the Hublot stuff I actually kind of liked. I thought that peach tangerine kind of sapphire case was pretty cool. But look, apart from that, I don't think I've ever seen less buzz about a show. I felt flat. The Hodinkee guys covered it probably because they had a gun held to their head and they had to. Everyone else kind of mentioned it because, well, it happened. And so you had to mention that it occurred. But across the board, in the enthusiast and even professional media, it just fell flat. Now, part of me is thinking maybe that's because LVMH, I said earlier, LVMH are kind of number 4 in the kind of watchmaking stakes, but they're definitely, with a bullet, number 1 in the luxury stakes. And this was very much a luxury show, almost more than a watch show. So maybe that was it. Maybe it was the super high end, everything that was decent was super expensive kind of thing. Maybe that's what killed us off. But then I remembered that last year, for example, the when at Dubai Watch Week, which is the same sort of deal, we had it generated a lot of buzz. A lot of people went to it. A lot of people got very excited. There was a lot of coverage in all of the media about what happened. Everyone just felt more up about everything. And I don't think the watches were really that different. It's again, so even though you can make the excuse for LVMH being a luxury, more luxury than watchmaker, even though you can make the excuse that the watches that they produced were more high end, like Tag didn't even bother showing up, I think that's giving them a pass when they don't deserve it. Because even if you compare them to themselves last year, this show was super flat. I think what it comes down to is, quite frankly, for an online media show, it was shit. It was limp. It was half-hearted. It really lacked any kind of oomph. There was nothing exciting, nothing engaging. And I really do find myself thinking that as watchmakers have pulled out of doing these big shows where they would have spent potentially millions of dollars, they're trying to replace it by paying peanuts. They're trying to replace that with just doing the absolute minimum they can get away with. And as a result, they're producing crap. They're producing boring, uninspiring shows, which quite frankly just suck the life out of the room. Now, look, I know LVMH is selling watches, not computer games. I know that the market's smaller. I know they're luxury, not kind of the sorts of things you'd expect to see in a $20 a month subscription computer game. Okay, so I understand that. Comparing the LVMH Watch Week to, for example, the BlizzCon that just happened, the Blizzard convention. In fact, it was called BlizzConline. Their online version this year is I won't say unfair, but you have to do it carefully. So I would never for an instant say that if you're LVMH or Swatch or Richemont or the Wilsdorf Group, you would want to follow the format. But I think you can learn some lessons. And the first thing is the sheer amount of content, the sheer commitment to what you are doing. If you go to the LVMH website, you might find a link to a video or two. If you go to, LVMH doesn't even have a YouTube channel. If you go to each of the brand channels, there's not a lot there covering what they did. There's very little media involved. And what is there is pretty boring. It's someone who's standing, talking to the camera, and that's about it. And it's pretty canned. Okay, now take that idea and go look on YouTube at what Blizzard did over the last 2 days for their BlizzCon Online, their virtual replacement for an online show, for what would normally be, a kind of turn-up convention. And they pulled out all the stops. Over these 2 days, there is something like 20-something videos, ranging from 15 to 20 minutes out to 4-hour videos when they present things and have Q&As, and they have all the designers on board to talk about their history and where they came from and why soundtracks sound the way they do. And they go through drawings, sample drawings and drafts of characters, showing how the character evolved to get to what it is now. They have Q&A sessions. They have opening ceremonies and closing ceremonies. They have interaction with the community where the community is asked to give feedback, and then that is discussed by the designers in real time with comments. On the side of that, you have streamers who are following these games, providing blow-by-blow descriptions, themselves also running chats at the same time. At its peak, there were hundreds of thousands of people watching this and interacting. There was thousands of people sitting on the streams waiting for them to start. The buzz out of that is enormous. The area around that, the people that pay attention to this, are still humming with anticipation around what happened. Now, I am not for an instant saying that you can replicate all of that with a watch show. I'm not for a second saying why that you can, you're not going to get the numbers. You're not going to be able to do a lot of the things. However, you can do much of it. There's no reason why you can't have a Q&A with some of the people afterwards. There's no reason why you can't live stream some of this show and have comments going on the side. There is absolutely no reason why, and there's many reasons why you should not have the designer of the watch sit down and run through how the sketches developed, how the design developed, show how things came together. Now, in the wake of, for example, all the controversy over the Chronomaster, can you imagine how powerful that would be? Having the designer say, here was my early sketch. This is what we had in mind. This is how it flowed. These were some prototypes as we went through. This didn't work. This is what we wanted to do instead. And this is where we ended up. There is zero reason why they couldn't do that. And can you imagine the excitement, the buzz, the interest? What were the problems that Bulgari had when they were trying to develop the Grand Sonnery? What problems did they have to overcome? What solutions did they find? How hard was it to go through? Not super difficult, but really engaging, really. And then take the jewelry pieces. What does it take to make one of these things? How long does it take? How do you train someone to do it? Where did the inspiration come from and why did we end up? So many questions could have been asked. It would not have been horrendously expensive. It would have been way cheaper than a booth, but it would have just been killer, and it would have got us engaged in watches, which quite frankly, right now, none of us give a rat's ass about. So I think that what BlizzCon Online showed is what is needed in terms of commitment. What you really have to kind of think about is required, and you've got to stop thinking that we're going to get away with a couple of canned pieces of a guy in a suit talking to a camera, and that is somehow going to be enough. So I think LVMH failed. They probably shouldn't be smacked around too much, because up until now, every watch company has failed in all of its online stuff. A few have done better, have got a little bit closer, but frankly, they all need to just go and watch how professionals that live and breathe online presentations do their stuff, and they need to say, we can't copy it, but we've got to grab that spirit. We've got to grab that commitment and find a way to bring it to what we do online. And we can not only replace, but surpass everything we've done in the past. That's my take on LVMH Watch Week. I've been Pete McConville. This has been Not So Obvious Watches, and I'll see you later. Bye.